everyone, and welcome back to another Storytime video. Since college football is formally going to kick off this Saturday, so tomorrow, technically week 0 kicked off this past Saturday, but week 1, where everybody plays, is tomorrow. So, in honor of college football being back, I thought about which college football team, in my opinion, is the best of all time. Now, I have kinda wondered this. I kinda give this a bit of thought every year, but this year I have fully made a determination. Had you asked me 2 years ago, in 2019, I would have said 2018 Clemson. Why? Probably because they beat Alabama so badly, and recency bias. But they are not the best college football team ever. They were pretty good. 2018 Clemson was really good. But I'm not here to make a top 10 list. Maybe that'll be next year. I would have to do more research, but I do have some candidates in mind, including a team that hardly anyone talks about in terms of being the greatest. The 05 Texas Longhorns with Vince Young. That team was pretty good. But I think if you removed the recency bias, I am kind of staring right at 2019 LSU when I say that. I think a lot of people would say 2001 Miami because of the fact that they had so many future NFL Pro Bowlers and All-Pros on that team. They had Sean Taylor, Ed Reed, Jonathan Vilma, Willis McGahee, Frank Gore, Andre Johnson, Jeremy Shockey, Kellen Winslow Jr., Bryant McKinney. They even had Vince Wilfork on that team. They were loaded when it comes to NFL talent. But they, based on a player-wise, they might be the most skilled team in college football. But having a lot of future NFL Pro Bowlers and All-Pros does not necessarily warrant you best college football team of all time, in my opinion. Before I say who I think is the best college football team of all time, might I just say that if any college football team ends up having one loss, I would not qualify them in the running of best college football team. So while recently 2014 Ohio State was really good, they lost to Virginia Tech at home by 2 touchdowns, I think. It's like, no, you do not lose at home to an unranked team that goes 500 by multiple scores and be considered one of the best. I get that they beat some pretty good teams later in the year, but no. And also, besides the '05 Longhorns, another team in terms of all-time great teams that doesn't really get talked about a whole lot is 2013 Florida State. That team was absolutely amazing. I think it was 21 of the 22 starters ended up playing professional football, most of them in the NFL. But, like I said, having future NFL greats does not necessarily make you a great college football team. It certainly helps, but it doesn't make you the best by default. Now, without further ado, I think that the greatest football team to ever take a college football field is the 1995 Nebraska Cornhuskers. And here's why. I think that they are the best because they beat teams by an average of 38 points. That's right. They beat teams by an average of 38. That's 3-8. That is over 5 touchdowns. Well, 5 touchdowns and a field goal on an average. And the last year of the Big 8 that year in 95, before it became the Big 12 and added Texas, Baylor, Texas Tech, and Texas A&M, there were 4 teams to win 10 or more games. Those being Nebraska, of course, Colorado, Kansas State, and Kansas. So the Cornhuskers had to face a lot of talented teams in that conference, and they also played Kansas and Colorado on the road as well. So they were playing some pretty good ranked teams, mostly on the road as well, within their own conference, and absolutely blowing them out. I think their closest game was like somewhere in the 20s in terms of the number of points they won. And they beat Steve Spurrier's Florida Gators team in the national title by like 38, which is, I think, the second highest, or the second, well, it's the second worst beating that a number 1 team is given to a number 2, or maybe vice versa, in terms of the gap between the number 1 and number 2 team when they have played and the score. Now, that 38 average margin of point victory is the best since World War II, which is almost 80 years. If you count 44, that's still 77 years. So, and, you know, one more impressive thing about 1995 Nebraska, well, there's 2 more things. One of the more impressive things about that team is that Nebraska at that time ran the option. And so opponents knew that Nebraska was going to run, and they couldn't stop it. They couldn't stop Nebraska, and they knew they were going to run. It was a matter of Tommy Frazier, the quarterback of that team, being able to run the option so well. And having Ahman Green in the backfield, future NFL Pro Bowler. But like I said, it doesn't really matter. But Ahman Green was still pretty good. And Lawrence Phillips, when he played and when he wasn't suspended, was a pretty good option for the Cornhuskers in the backfield as well. And might I mention that I think that Tom Osborne is one of the greatest college football coaches to ever coach college football, and he was the head coach. And because Nebraska's assistant coaches stayed there for a long time, you had a whole lot of experience in the coaching ranks. So they definitely knew how to put a game plan together. Like, for instance, in terms of their coaching experience, the defensive coordinator, Charlie McBride, at that point had been there as the defensive coordinator for 15 years. And I think Charlie McBride was a position coach before he became the defensive coordinator at Nebraska for another 5 years at the school. And their offensive line coach had been there for about 21, 22 seasons. And Tom Osborne's future successor, Frank Solich, had been on the staff for about 10, 15 years. So you had a lot of coaching experience. Experience that I don't quite think that 2001 Miami or 2019 LSU would have, in terms of another two teams I mentioned earlier that people think are really freaking good, and that might be the best of all time. I don't know if 95 Nebraska would beat 01 Miami or 2019 LSU in a football game based on today's rules. Now, based on 2019 rules. Now, if it were to be 1995 rules, where it could limit LSU's passing attack to a certain extent, then I would say that 95 Nebraska would win. Probably. I would say they would win 8 times out of 10. Maybe 8.5 times out of 10. But if we were playing by 2019 rules like LSU did, played with a couple seasons ago, I don't know. I would have to see how effective Tommy Frazier could be as a passer. Now, Tommy Frazier wasn't bad as a passer for Nebraska, but like I said earlier, he could run the option so well. And when you're like that, when you can run the option so well as a quarterback, this might be a stereotype, but it kind of limits you and your passing because you're not doing it all the time. But I think that if Nebraska just mixed in a little bit of downfield passing, some screens, stuff like that, I think that they could be very effective. And by the way, I'm talking about if the turnovers are even, by the way. Yes, of course, 95 Nebraska could be beaten by any of these tremendously talented teams as well if the other team, well, if 95 Nebraska commits a lot of turnovers. Like, if these faster athletes teams might have could get to the pitch man on the option faster and cause fumbles. Now, I don't know if LSU's defense would be good enough to really combat Nebraska. And then that makes me think, what if LSU could outscore Nebraska? Could they do that? I really don't know. I mean, Nebraska typically scored in 2 minutes that year. So 2 or 3 minutes. So it's not like they were playing ball control, trying to bleed the clock throughout that season. I do believe they would try to do that to Joe Burrow in that offense. But I don't know. And that's just one team that I've thought of. But yeah, in short, 1995 Nebraska is the best team ever in college football. Now, I am willing to listen to arguments, but based on what I said, based on all the coaching experience, based on the fact that everyone knew Nebraska was going to run and they couldn't stop it, largest margin of victory, average margin of victory over an entire season in the last 70 plus years, and their tough conference, I don't think that anyone could persuade me. But let me know what you think. I am more than willing to hear from you. But yeah, I'm interested to see what you guys think is the best college football team and why you think that. But yeah, one thing that knocks 01 Miami down in my assessment of them is that they had a kind of close game against an unranked team. Granted, it was on the road, but still. Nebraska did not have that. But I'm I have laid out all my arguments, so I'm interested to see what you guys think. And CS guys, I do believe that will do it for this storytime video, and next storytime video. I will see you later. Goodbye, guys! Thank you all for watching.